There's Marilisa. If you want to wave to everyone, this is a woman that for me is Amarone, and I'm not the only one that feels this way. And I've been lucky enough to meet her many years ago. Well, 2007, I was lucky enough to have lunch with her and a couple of colleagues at the winery, and then again in New York and again in Plum Market in Chicago. So a very soft spot in my heart for you, especially since the wines are terrific. Loving a friend's wines makes life wonderful if you're in this business. Thank you for agreeing to this. And I know you're going to tell us all about the Veronese wines that your family produces, especially Amarone, but just a couple, and your family background, but just a couple of things people should be aware of. I mean, Allegrini is truly a pioneer in the Veneto, in their corner of it, when it comes to revolutionizing a couple of processes, particularly that of drying grapes and fermentation technique that Marilisa will describe, and also, you know, championing single vineyard sites, which her father did, which was, you know, quite extraordinary for this region. She is president of the Amarone Families. Let's see if I can say this. Famiglie dell'Amarone d'arte. Did I do okay?
Perfect.
It's my Greek accent. And her family, which comes from the late Giovanni's heart, is passionate about hospitality. And your beautiful Villa della Torre, which we will see, is a 16th century palace, which I think we all have to visit when we can travel again. So before I turn it over to you, I do want to quote one thing, and I think you said it, and it just stopped me in my tracks, Marilisa. Tradition is not immobility, meaning when you bow to tradition, it doesn't mean you stand still. And to that effect, if we have time, hopefully you'll tell us about your Tuscan property as well, which we're not tasting tonight, but we're happy to represent. So everyone join me in welcoming Marilisa Allegrini from, where are you right now? Are you in Fumane?
No, I am at home in Verona, in the city, Verona. Because I live in the city, and so I'm here. And Madeleine, I must say that I'm so grateful and so honored to participate to this presentation. You know, I think that we represent women in the wine industry, and Madeleine, you are and the first woman that was able to achieve the Master Sommelier degree. So we are, all the women in the wine industry are very proud of you.
Oh, what a kind thing to say. And I have to be terribly honest and tell you I was the first American woman, but there's an English woman who passed before I did. And I never had a chance to meet her, but you're very kind to mention it. And you have two daughters.
When we gather among different wine producers, sommelier, CEO of companies, we always talk about you.
Oh, that makes my day. Thank you. I promise you, I think I told you before everyone got on, I am so grateful I can still taste with enthusiasm, and the wine still speaks to me. And Marilisa, I don't take it for granted. When I poured these wines about an hour ago and I put my nose in the glass, I was laughing. Every one of them, so unique, so beautiful, you know. So I'm lucky.
Thank you very much. And when you speak, I feel the same passion that I have when I speak about my wines. And so this is something that we definitely have in common. And what the wine industry would be without passion, without dedication, without commitment to quality. So this is why we are so excited to work in this field, in this kind of business.
We are indeed. And you do have two daughters. Is at least one of them going to join the business?
I think more or less both. Not in the way that I did, And I think that, you know, the new generation, they want to live better because my life was quite tough. Unfortunately, my father passed away when I was young, so I had to work in the company when I didn't have the experience. And it was very, very challenging. So I don't want them to travel around the world taking 150 planes per year. So they want to be in the wine business, but they want to have a more sustainable approach to business, which is something that I think the next generation really deserve. We sacrifice a lot of things in our life, including, for example, for me, when they were young, I didn't spend so much time with them because I had to travel. And so I think that it will be very important for them to believe and to behave in a different way.
They are lucky to have you. Can you go back to, oh, here we go. Is this Caterina?
This is Caterina, is my second daughter. She's very interested in the marketing side, and she's studying philosophy. She's doing a PhD in philosophy, but I'm sure that sooner or later she will share her academic studies and profession with the family business.
Well, it's good she's doing something that makes her heart and her mind happy, and then that'll make her work even better. And your other daughter's name is Carlota, is that correct?
Carlota is a medical doctor, but and she's very, you know that it was what I wanted to be, doctor, but my father didn't allow me to go to the university and to study medicine. He said, you have to do something connected with the family business. And Carlota, she's already graduated, and she's very interested in the medicine that is connected with the health. And so I'm sure that she will be also part of the development of the hospitality and the kind of thing that we can do at the winery connected with the health and the
lifestyle. Absolutely.
Yes.
John, can you go back to that unbelievably great picture of Marilisa and her father? You are 12 years old. You said, look how tall you are.
No, no, but I'm very proud of this picture because, you know, my father was working very hard. And so the only way to spend some time with him was to go in the vineyard with him. And it was a kind of gift for me to share the day with him in the vineyard. And so during the summer holidays, I often went to the vineyard with Giovanni. And I think that I learned from the beginning the dedication that you have to the land, and also the...
Oh, we need somebody to mute themselves. Thank you. Go ahead, Marilisa.
Yes, every day to look at the development of the grapes. It was a fantastic lesson for me to listen to him and to live in contact with the nature.
Did you argue with him when you wanted to go to medical school, or you just accepted it?
Yeah, no, I was very, very disappointed when he didn't allow me to go to the medical school. But at the end, I understood that he wanted, you know, the agriculture business in Italy is in the hand of men. And when you have boys, the boys could guarantee the continuation of the company. And my father was a kind of pioneer also in this sense, because he understood that the women approach to the business was something that was important. And so he definitely wanted me to go back to the family business.
And that's extraordinary because you had two brothers, correct? Walter and Franco.
Yes,
right.
They were already working in the company.
It's a great picture.
I think that he understood that the woman could give this. In this picture, you see Franco. Franco is my youngest brother. He's the winemaker. And I think that Franco was able to follow my father's approach to the business, so developing new technique and also being in the forefront of innovation. And this is what is Allegrini now. Is considered to be one of the winery that introduce a lot of innovation in Valpolicella.
John, can you show us a map, just because I like to remind us all where we are in the world, you know, because we may not know. We shouldn't assume that everybody knows. That's a great map.
So Italy is divided in 20 regions, and the wine in white is Veneto. The capital is Venice, and Veneto is very important from the production for the wine production. In the eastern part of Veneto, we have the Prosecco area, and then the southern part is the alluvial plain, so is agricultural area where there are a lot of agricultural product like corn, rice that is planted. But from the middle part of the Veneto up to the north, there are the hills where we have viticulture. And in the map that is on the right-hand side, you see in black, you see the wine producing area that is located in the north part of the city of Verona.
So here's Verona, and then here we are. And these are the three wines, by the way, everyone, that we're going to taste in the order. 1, 2, 3, going left to right. There was another map that was more specific, wasn't there?
Yes.
Let's see. I know John's going to show it to us because I found that. Oh, here we go. This is a great map.
This is the map, and this is the map of Valpolicella. I want to mention one thing. The name dates back to the Roman time because the viticulture in Valpolicella dates back to the Roman time. And Valpolicella means valley, poli, many, cella, winery. So the valley of many wineries.
And poli means many in Greek too, Marilisa.
Yes. Yes. So the name comes from Latin and Greek. And this gives you the idea that this area, in terms of wine production, is 2,000 years old. And you see where Allegrini is located in one of the villages of the Valpolicella area. And we have vineyard in 4 of the 5 villages of the Valpolicella. So Allegrini is a producer that is an historical producer. I'm very proud to represent the 6th generation in the wine business. But thanks to the intuition that my father had and thanks to the commitment to quality, he was able to purchase land in Valpolicella. So in terms of size, we are a medium size winery, but in terms of land that we own, we are one of the largest. And
oh my God, what a view. What are we looking at here? This is spectacular.
Yeah, this is my hometown, the village of Fumane. And you see the hills and you see the the first part of the hill where we have the vineyards. And
down here.
Thanks to this characteristic of the geological characteristic and also the geographic characteristic, we have a very good soil, so soil with very good drainage, but also we have a very good climate because thanks to the valley we have ventilation, and ventilation is means that you can make quality wines because you don't have ventilation is one of the key things of the microclimate. Because
and you have correct, you've got elevation too, because you've got vineyards at altitude that, you know, we're the only country in the world that does feet instead of meters, but they're pushing over 1,000 meters, and you've also got the influence of Lake Garda there too, correct? So that influences with breezes coming in from the lake. What are we looking at here? This is just beautiful.
This is one vineyard where we make a special selection of Amarone that is called Fieramonte, and the meaning of Fieramonte is proud mountain. And yes, and you see that is a top part of the hill overlooking the valley, where you have very good sun in the morning. So thanks to this, the grapes achieve very good maturation. Because
now everyone's going to ask me, can we get that wine in the United States? That's your Riserva Amarone, is that correct?
Yeah, but in the future, you will have also Fieramonte.
Okay, so we can wait for it.
Our iconic Amarone. And I think that in less than 1 year, you will have Fieramonte, and it is a wine that combine the characteristic of Allegrini, which is I think that in all the wines that we are going to taste, you will see and you will perceive the elegance. So Fieramonte Amarone is very strong, very intense, very deep, very full-bodied, but without losing the freshness and without losing the elegance.
Well, the acidity in all the wines I'm tasting are terrific. So if you wouldn't mind, if we can talk about the Palazzo della Torre, which is going in a welcoming direction as opposed to the peak of Fieramonte, that would be terrific, because I think a lot of the people that are listening to us have the Palazzo della Torre. And everyone, by the way, if you have questions, type them in the chat room and we'll get to them, and we'll open it up for live questions in a bit. But I'm playing with the Palazzo della Torre, whose color surprised me because it's quite concentrated, and the spice didn't surprise me. I expected it, but all that, it's really refreshing, Marilisa, which is something that I think we don't expect.
I think that Palazzo della Torre reflect the essence of the vineyard, how we planted the vineyard, how we do the vinification process, and is stylistically a wine that is between the basic Valpolicella and the Amarone. You know that the production in Valpolicella works like a pyramid. In the base of the pyramid, we have the Valpolicella, fresh, fruity, easy drinkable style of wine. And then in the top of the pyramid, we have Amarone. In the middle, we have some winery have Ripasso. We have our single vineyard that are represented by the two wines that we are going to taste, so Palazzo della Torre and La Grola. And why Palazzo della Torre has this velvety aroma on the aftertaste and this kind of plum flavor both in the nose and in the mouth, because Palazzo della Torre is a combination of grapes vinified at the harvest time, so grapes that are freshly picked and they go through the fermentation, and then 30% of the grapes are dried.
One third of the grapes are dried.
What?
One third, 30% are dried?
30%, yes. They dry, and they dry like in the same process that we do for Amarone. And when the grapes are dried, we distemp and we blend with the wine made from freshly picked grapes. And so the fermentation starts again. So the end result of this unique vinification process that is really one of the key things at Allegrini is a wine that also from the tasting point of view is similar, or it has some nuances that Amarone has. And here you see a beautiful picture of the dried grapes, and I don't know if you want to go to the La Grola first, or if you want me to talk about the drying process now.
Let's look at the, if we can look at where the grapes are dried, because we opened that window when we're talking about dried grapes. And it's such a fascinating subject. And Marilisa, just to have it straight in my head, the difference at Allegrini is, as opposed to Ripassa, is that the dried grapes for the Palazzo della Torre are made on their own, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
We choose grapes that come from the vineyard Palazzo della Torre, so not generic grapes. And also, ripasso is made using the pomace of the Amarone at the end of the Amarone vinification process. So with this leftover of the Amarone, adding this material to the wine made from freshly picked grapes, the fermentation start again. And in Palazzo della Torre, we use dried grapes. So we have more, what can I say, respect of the flavor of the wine and the grapes. And also we have more longevity. And in fact, Ripasso is a wine that normally is not for long aging. Palazzo della Torre, you can age for 10, 15 years.
Now you just educated me completely, because I'm going to interrupt to say that people have heard Ripassa, and this is not, that's when they re-ferment on the lees, or, the pomace of the Amarone. That's not done here, but you end up having a wine in the Palazzo della Torre that tastes terrific young. But if we forgot a case in our basement for 10 years, it would be just fine.
Now, Palazzo is, I think that when we started making this change in the second fermentation, it was a kind of revolution. And Franco, my brother, the guy that you saw in the picture before, really had this idea to use the dried grapes instead of the pomace of the Amarone.
John, can you show us that beautiful picture where there's a fan, I think, in the middle of the warehouse? I love this picture because it's not just your wines in the warehouse, correct? There are other people's wines in this warehouse, or are they all yours?
No, this is Terre di Fumane, which is a kind of, how can I say, it's not a cooperative, but is a company where other wineries gather and they dry the grapes. But the guy that inspired this project was in 1998 my brother Franco, and in fact he is still the CEO of the company. And it was his practical idea of the development of the drying facility, together with a professor of enology, Professor Roberto Ferrarini. And these two guys really invented this new approach to the drying process.
And it's much more controlled, correct? You don't have to worry about, bad things developing or even botrytis. You know, when I visited, I was just amazed at how beautiful the whole room smelled. You know, it was something I didn't expect from a drying process. We should probably transition, if you don't mind, to La Grola, though I could talk about this subject forever, just because I think this is as unique a wine for different reasons. Is this the picture of the vineyard?
Yes, this is La Grola, and the picture was taken by the drone, because to look at the vineyard, you really have to go up to the sky, or you can go on Google Map, and if you digit La Grola, Valpolicella, it takes you to this beautiful place.
This is fantastic. And these are walls, correct?
Yes.
Those are walls that are very, very unique in this area. I haven't seen them elsewhere.
What you see in this picture is the altitude, because you can understand that is the top of the hill, and also you can see the soil. You see how white is the soil. So this white soil means that it's a very poor soil with a lot of calcare, a lot of chalk, and thanks to this, there is very good drainage. Remember always that good drainage is a key thing for quality grapes, because when you have good drainage, the vines push the roots down in the bottom part of the soil, and thanks to this, they go down to absorb water. But thanks to this, in the different layers, they also absorb minerals. And minerality is one of the elements that give complexity to the wine. And I think that when you taste La Grola, you understand this concept of minerality that is very strong, very precise.
But also a spectacular aroma. I loved your description, I think, is wild berries. And it's absolutely, the aromatics are a combination of that minerality, which, you know, is a rocky character combined with this perfectly ripe, not overripe, not dried, dark fruit, you know, these fabulous berries, and then other elements that I can't define, but there's a beautiful earthiness to it that is almost dusty. I mean, it's really special. I don't perceive the oak on this, but I'm sure that there is some new oak on this, Marilisa, on the La Grola.
Yes, we have 50% of new oak and 50% second year. But, you know, and I have to mention the grape variety. You know that in Italy we have 1,000 native grape variety. In Valpolicella, we use only native grape variety. And the most important one is Corvina. And when you taste La Grola, you have the flavor of the Corvina at its best, because it's Corvina that comes from high altitude, and Corvina that, thanks to the ventilation, is very spicy. The resulting wine is very spicy and very intense.
And from the looks of it, I mean, the skins are thick, so it gives tremendous color to the wine, yes? And the tannin on the La Grola is drying, but you can still taste the wine through it. So this is Corvina, but another grape as well, correct?
Yes, is the first one on the left-hand side, and the one on the right-hand side. So La Grola is a blend of Corvina and Oseletta.
Is this Oseletta here? This is Oseletta?
Yes, you see the smaller bunch is Oseletta. And just to give you the comparative flavor, Oseleta is very similar to Petit Verdot because it has a very good amount of tannins.
Tannin and color, right?
Yes, yes. And we planted Oseleta because of this.
And we had a question. There are no dried grapes in La Grola? You had told me they're not needed, correct?
No, we don't need because of the location of the vineyard, of this small production, thanks to the good drainage. And also, Madeleine, you mentioned the proximity to Lake Garda.
Yes.
Lake Garda is a very important factor in the microclimate of the Valpolicella. So La Grola is the last part, the western part of the Valpolicella area, and is the closest to
Lake
the...
Garda, oh.
So it's the one that has the most beneficial influence from the lake.
What's the name of the commune there? I forgot. I stared at the map, but I completely forgot it. It's
the map of?
It's not Fumane. It's what's the commune that is?
It's Sant'Ambrogio.
Sant'Ambrogio. That's it.
Yes.
Right. I have to tell you, it also smells floral. It smells. You know how sometimes when you smell Malbec, you'll smell like violets and lavender. It has such a pretty. I have just adored this wine, and you know, I'm making this about business for 10 seconds because those of you who didn't get the La Grola. We made it very accessible to you, and it has got some bottle age, and it's showing like $1 million. So I hope that my description, which is coming from the heart, is enticing you to try it if you didn't get it for this tasting, because I love this wine. I just love it.
Thank you.
Now, there is one wine we're not showing, if you don't mind my mentioning it, because I'd like people to look for it. When they see it, and that's La Polla, correct? And that's a single vineyard also. How does that differ from La Grola if people see La Polla?
La Polla is the top part of the hill of La Grola and is planted only with Corvina and with the best clone of Corvina. So the Corvina that considering my father ideas was the best. And
so that was unusual to do 100% Corvina?
Yeah, it was a real kind of revolution for the Valpolicella. And the soil is completely white, so the white stone that are located on the top of the hill reflect the sun. And so we have a very good maturation, and also they accumulate the heat, so they keep very healthy environment around the vines.
I was lucky enough to visit La Polla. I remember this very clearly, and I'm surprised we got up and down the hill because we weren't in a very good vehicle. But I want to mention to everyone that it's pronounced, it's spelled Polla, P-O-J-A. And as I said, I don't usually mention a wine we're not tasting, but it's a very important part of the Allegrini family of wines. And we've already mentioned their Reserva, which we don't have at the moment, but we're going to look for it next year in the States. I just wanted to mention it because it is a wine, truly a wine for special occasions if people happen to find it. Now, there's another grape we haven't talked about, Marilisa, if you don't mind, because we're headed in the direction of the Amarone, and that's Corvinone. Did I say it right?
Yes, perfectly right. Corvinone, coming from the left, is the second grape.
This guy right here, this is Corvinone. Oh, they're bigger, yes. And the grapes are bigger.
Yes, and similar to Corvina, in the past it was considered to be part of the family, so a clone of Corvina, but in the recent year, through the study of the DNA, they realized that it is a different grape variety.
Oh, no kidding. And so even though the name sounds similar, it is a completely it's a grape independent. It's not it's not a child of Corvina.
No. And One one in Italian said also for always for something big. So Corvina, Corvinone in our language is big Corvina. In fact, you can see from the bunches, from the two bunches, that Corvinone is bigger in terms of bunch and also in terms of berries. Berries are bigger in terms of size than Corvina. And what happened in recent years was that we did some micro vinification of the Corvinone, and Franco really fell in love with the Corvinone because he thinks that Corvinone give to the wine spiciness, concentration, and without losing the elegance. And this, I think, that are the characteristics of Allegrini Amarone.
And you use, correct me if I'm wrong, because I was reading this earlier today, that Corvinone is very happy in its role as a dried grape. Is that correct? That it does remarkably well being dried.
Yes. Corvinone is the grape variety that, thanks to the thick skin that characterize the berries, is the grape variety that give you the best flavor during and after the drying process. So is very important when you dry the grapes.
You know what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, before we talk about the Amarone, because we're really entering a very specific universe with Amarone. If I want to invite anyone who would like to comment on either the Palazzo della Torre or the La Grola, if you're tasting it, and tell us how they seem to you, because I be honest with you, it's selfish. I get tired of the sound of my own voice, and I wouldn't mind hearing a comment from someone who's not shy to speak up if you have either or both of those wines in your glass. Anyone? Everyone's being so quiet and well-mannered. Brett, I'm going to call on you to unmute yourself because you're the one
I am going to unmute myself.
About the 14 La Grola, and I want to know what you love about this wine.
Well, yeah, then I have a couple of questions I want her to answer that's been asked on the chat board. But, when I first opened this bottle, it needed time. My first impression was like, uh-oh. And then all of a sudden I just texted John. I was like, when I first opened, I thought it might have an off bottle, might be oxidized. That didn't last very long. It was like 4 or 5 minutes, and then it just blossomed to like very fresh fruit. 2014 was not a vintage that, the press really liked, but I like the 2014 wines from Veneto because they're more reserved, and I like the acid profiles, especially on the La Grola. It's gorgeous.
I got to tell you, I'm going to do a couple of private virtual tastings with the theme, the best wines you've never heard of, and this is one of the wines I'm going to show because it is, it doesn't have the terms Valpolicella or Recioto or Amarone. It has the beautiful name of Allegrini on it, and it's got a great story and pictures, thanks to Marilisa. So I'm very happy. Oh, no, not at all. Anyone else want to pipe up about the first two wines before we talk about Amarone? You just need to drink a little bit more. You'll feel better after you drink a little more Amarone. Go ahead, Marilisa. Let's talk about I saw
one comment. This wine needs to breathe.
Yes.
And I think that especially when an intense red is young, if you have time to open the bottle 1 hour before and you decant, you have the development of the best flavor. So,
well, let me ask you though, does it drop sediment? And I don't know, I've never seen this. Does Corvina and Corvinone, do they drop coloring matter? Do you have to use a light to separate it from the clear wine, or you don't worry about it?
No, I think
like Bordeaux, you always have to decant Bordeaux because there's always a lot of sediment in the bottle, but you don't worry about it with.
No, I think that we have to educate the consumer that some sediment is okay, is a natural thing that can happen in the wine, and also is not something that is bad. It's something that is for natural wine is something that can happen.
It's a natural process, right?
Yes,
But obviously then that the sediment that does fall in these wines doesn't affect the flavor. You don't mind it. And that's important for everyone to know, that they don't have to be paranoid about it. They don't have to be super careful about it, because sometimes with Cabernet-based wines, it will make the wine taste bitter. So, and what is your favorite temperature? Do you like them like, I was thinking maybe not too cold, not cellar temperature, a little bit warmer?
I don't like room temperature when the room temperature is 22 degrees. I don't know in Fahrenheit, but I like a little bit cold, not chilled, but what in Italy is 16 degrees, which I guess is approximately something less than 50 degrees. John, can you help me with the temperature?
Yeah, we're talking like 60, 65 degrees Fahrenheit, aren't we, John? Are you doing the math?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So the general rule of thumb is multiply by 3, and then I think it's add 10 or something like that. But yeah, so Marilisa was saying she didn't want the wine to be, around 70 or 75, how you might keep your homes. That's just too warm. So it's really much better to be around that 60 to 65. And actually, personally, I keep my little wine fridge in my apartment here, at 55, because I know it'll warm up with the ambient temperature in the room, because I like my wine to be around 60 to 65 degrees.
But I think you're bringing up a really important point that, you can always warm the wine up. If you're using a decanter or you're using, here we go, her 16 degrees Celsius is 61 Fahrenheit. So we're talking 5 degrees over classic cellar temperature. And I would say that even if it goes up to 65, it's just fine. So let's talk about the Amarone and what is so unbelievably unique about this wine that really wasn't made in that area until what, 1950, 1960, something like that.
Yeah, Amarone is a wine that became famous quite recently, because the drying process is something that is very old, ancient type of way of managing the grapes, but it was supposed to be for the production of sweet wine, the recioto. And in the 50s, Amarone became popular because in some vintages was not possible to keep the residual sugar in the wine made from dried grapes. So there was the complete transformation of the sugar into alcohol. And so
but they didn't mean it. It just happened. It was like almost an accident. Just happened.
Right. And at the beginning, it was considered a real disaster because there was no market for dry wine from dried grapes. But very slowly, and in the recent year, in much faster, the Amarone found its place in the world and in the category of the top reds. And so Amarone became very, very popular.
In a very short period of time. I will tell you that it is absolutely considered a classic in my universe. Yes. And in Master Sommelier exams, it's, Amarone is something you have to have experienced because you should be able to recognize it, I'm happy to say.
And is something very unique because it's a wine made from dried grapes, but is dry. And also, I think that the evolution in terms of style that Amarone had in the last 20 years is something that was desirable. And again, Allegrini was in the forefront of this. And it was desirable because the traditional Amarone used to have this port-like flavor that is a kind of flavor that with this style you cannot match Amarone with food. With this style, with the style that has concentration, flavor, resin flavor, but not the port-like flavor.
It's not, doesn't smell oxidized, Marilisa. It smells like dried grapes, but not, not that port oxidation character.
And this was something that helped the Amarone to find his place on stage. And now, finally, Amarone is considered to be one of the top Italian reds. I would like to thank Richard that said that my 16 degrees is approximately 61. So thank you, Richard.
So Marilisa, was it both Giovanni and your brother Franco? What did they bring to the table in terms of modern Amarone production? Did they introduce French barriques? Were they one of the producers that started using French barrels?
But before the introduction of the aging process, the new approach to the aging, what Franco introduced was what you see in this beautiful picture of Corvinone. You see a bunch with berries that are perfectly healthy, and so the skin are very good, and so thanks to the integrity of the skin, we can extract from the skin, when the grapes go through the fermentation, we can extract the tannins, the coloring component, the polyphenols, and we can avoid this high-end residual sugar and also the oxidation. So this was the first step. The second step was the vinification process, because the vinification process was very long. It was 40-45 days. Now is no more than 25-30 days, because when you have the right color, it means that you also have the right structure. And then the big revolution was the approach with the oak. So instead of putting in a big barrel finished wine, which was what we used to do in the past, now when we separated the juice from the skin, we immediately put the wine into small barrels, from tonneau up to 10-20 hectoliters. And thanks to this, we have very good integration between the tannins of the wine and the tannin of the oak.
But I'll tell you also, the flavor of the oak is not intrusive in this wine. I don't know how many of the barrels are new, but it doesn't pull my attention away from the quality of the fruit at all. And the tannin, I really have to, if everyone, those of you who are tasting the Amarone, it's very interesting. If you can manage to get everything gently out of the way, except for the mouthfeel for a moment, you have actually plenty of refreshing acidity, and you have tannins that are changing the texture of your mouth, but not in an aggressive, almost mean way, the way Cabernet and Nebbiolo will. These tannins are drying, but they're very refined tannins, Marilisa. And the wine actually, I'm not eating. and the wine tastes, all of the flavors are surging through. I don't have to erase the tannin to perceive the flavors.
This is the characteristic of Corvina. Corvina never have aggressive tannins, not when you vinify at the harvest time and not when you vinify the dried grapes like this.
But I want to ask you, because I'm embarrassed, I haven't tasted older vintages of Allegrini Amarone. And like this one to me, which is the 15, a very good vintage, is tasting, you know, just beautiful dried cherry fruit and ripe fresh, both red and black fruits, those refined tannins, integrated oak. What happens in 10 years or so? What kind of aromas and flavors can we look forward to that are different?
Of course, in 2015 Amarone, you still have the primary aromas, and in fact, you have this this plum and these aromas of resin. With the aging, you have the tertiary aromas, so you have the evolution, which is very, very interesting for this type of wine, but again, without losing the elegance and without getting oxidized. And this is something that I always find very interesting, because an Amarone is a wine that has such a strong personality, and when you can appreciate this wine in 10, 15 years is fantastic. You have really great and excellent aromas. You have
softer tannins? Are the tannins a little bit softer?
What?
Is the tannin a little bit softer as the wine gets older?
Yes, yeah.
And tell me, now you, John, you have to pull up the spectacular picture of Marilisa making pasta, because I want to know some of your, look at this picture, it's spectacular. I want to know some of your very favorite foods to have with Amarone.
Oh, this is a very easy question for me, because you know, pasta goes well with a wine that is not as intense as Amarone. But I have one of my signature dish. It's not very easy to make. It takes half day. But when you make turkey for the it takes more than half day. So my signature dish for Amarone is anatra all'arancia, duck cooked with orange sauce.
Oh my God, this is fantastic. You know, everyone's going to be asking me for the recipe.
I will send you the recipe. Madeleine is quite long to make, but at the end is one of the great dish that goes especially well with Amarone. Because Amarone, you have this spiciness and you have the roundness that come from the dried grapes. So this dish, anatra all'arancia, combine sweetness and also richness, and so it's a perfect combination.
Oh, it's fantastic. And you know, I mean, people think, because I want to just throw this in for a moment. Those of us who are old enough have seen, you know, the word recioto, which signifies a sweeter style of Amarone. This is not in any way, shape, or form a sweet wine. It has tiny amounts of residual sugar, but it is a rich, dry red that takes that, you know, almost an illusion of sweetness from the dried grapes, the way that Marilisa has described it. And Richard has actually spelled it out for everyone, anatra all'arancia. Is that correct? That's fantastic.
The recipe, I promise.
So I have to tell you that you do make a recioto though in honor of your father, correct? You make it occasionally?
Yes. Giovanni, in fact, we gave the name to the wine Giovanni Allegrini because my dad is a winemaker and because he considered the recioto the real wine for the drying process. And probably because of his generation, when Amarone was not very popular, he considered Amarone something that was kind of accident. He didn't want, yes, this a glass of, or 3 glasses of recioto. And recioto is a wine that is very unique. Is recioto, yes, it reminds the port, but remember that in the port wine, to stop the fermentation, they add spirit, alcohol.
Yes.
In recioto, the fermentation stop naturally.
Right.
Yes.
So there's nothing added to it.
No.
But so is Giovanni Allegrini, again, is this wine just produced occasionally and only for the European market, or do you have it in the United States sometimes?
You know, a sweet red doesn't have a big market around the world, so the production is very small, and we mainly sell in the Verona area.
So we have to come visit you.
Yes, definitely. Because we have the beautiful villa that you saw at the beginning.
Oh, can you show that again, Sean? Because when we can fly, take international flights again, we can come and stay there, yes?
Villa della Torre, yes, is one of the most important monuments of the Italian Renaissance, and is the place where we have all our hospitality program. So when people come for tastings or visiting the vineyards or having lunch, dinners, and also staying, everybody is very welcome.
Well, we will hold that thought. And you told me a remarkable statistic before everyone else got on, that even though Italy had been, really brutally hit by the pandemic early on, tell us what the statistics are now. You have responded as a country in a remarkable way.
A few days ago, the school started again. And so we are seeing an increase of cases of positive people, but
much smaller than other countries.
The numbers that they announced today, in Italy, we had 2,000 people that were positive compared to yesterday, 2,000 people more than yesterday, but in France, they were 22,000. So this thing is something that we hope the science will help us to fight, but at the present time, we have to be very careful.
Well, we want to come and visit you, and I don't think you mind my telling everyone that we have to raise a glass to Marilisa for her company, but also for the fact that she's going to be a grandmother pretty soon. And she looks like the youngest, most beautiful grandmother I've ever met. So we can hold the thought for your beautiful doctor daughter, Carlotta, who's going to give you your first grandchild.
Yes.
And, I want to raise a glass because, to ignore what's happening in the world today is just absurd. We can raise a glass to a late American Supreme Court justice who was a very special soul by anybody's measure, and a woman, Marilisa. She was much more a pioneer than either of us are. I think that's safe to say. But you please know you have truly incredibly loving fan club in Metro Detroit. And I will hold the thought that one of these days, not only will we come to visit you, but you will come to visit us.
I miss your country. You know that America, United States is the place where I learn many things about wines, about communication, about storytelling. So I'm very, very grateful to the what your country gave to me. So I miss traveling. I have a lot of friends in the United States, so I hope that I will be able to travel again soon.
Well, this one will be very happy to welcome you with open arms, and I will remind everyone that next week we are going to do it a little bit later because Marilisa, it is now her 11:10 p.m.
Oh.
We're going to go back to 6:30 p.m. on Thursday. And my subconscious reminded me to talk about Cabernet because next week we're going to taste Bordeaux from the 15 and 16 vintages, which were terrific, very special. And we were I don't know if we were smart enough or lucky enough or both, but we still have plenty of them that were purchased at pre-tariff prices. So we want to share some of the more accessible ones with you, and that will be next Thursday at 6:30. But Marilisa, from our heart to yours, you know, to your very good health, to your country, your family, to you personally. Thank you for being the face of really unique, special wines and noble wines. And thank you for giving us your smile and your company tonight. Ciao. And
ciao, Madeleine. Ciao, John. Ciao, Brett.
Ciao, Marilisa.
Hello to everybody else. Thank you very much.
Anyone want to speak up with a quick comment before Marilisa, you know, can just rest and maybe drink the rest of what's in her glass? I'm going to stay on for a good 10 minutes with either John or Brett, but everyone's been very thoughtful and well-mannered. Any parting shots? You can say arrivederci or arrivederla to Marilisa. I never told you, Marilisa. I spent 1 year in Rome when I was 14 at the then all-girls school, Marymount International School for Girls in Rome. So I spoke a little bit of Italian for 1 year when I was 14. And I remember I did arrivederla, and I remember sconto, which means bargain, correct? Thank you very much. All the best to you, your beautiful daughters, your brother, your whole family. And next time we'll talk about Tuscany because we didn't get to that.
Okay.
Bulgari. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Marilisa. Have a great evening.
Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
A lot of information and wonderful wine.
Thank
aren't they terrific? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Complimenti.
Don't forget the recipe, Marilisa. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
I will send Madeleine.
And even if it's in Italian, we will get somebody to translate it for
I
us.
have in English. Ciao.
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 Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao. There we go.
So we have thank yous coming through in the chat room. We have expectations of the recipe that's coming. And any other comments on the wines from anyone? Here we go. I'm drinking the Amarone because I don't have to drive anywhere. And it's quite lush and smooth and modern in a good sense. And by that, I mean, I don't have to think my way through this wine. I can pay attention to it or not. And I think that's quite extraordinary because it's got a lot of depth even in its youth, but it's accessible. And it doesn't have any aromas that I have to explain away. There's nothing funky about it. The earthiness is integrated. Anybody else got the Amarone? Max, you are in Florida, correct? Is that where you are?
Hilton Head.
Hello to the Hutton family in Hilton Head.
Ciao.
Madeline.
Ciao.
Hi, Lisa. You have the Amarone, don't you? The Hutton family, I think you picked up all three wines while you were in Michigan, and brought them down to Hilton Head. Bravo. So we actually have a multi-state representation here. Is anyone else not in Michigan who'd like to pipe up and tell us where you are and what you are drinking or eating?
Well, I feel sorry for those who aren't in Michigan right now because it's absolutely gorgeous here. This is why we live in Michigan.
This is why we live in Michigan. Really, this time of year, there's just this window of a few weeks that is so special. I take walks outside and I think this is weather for the gods, you know. It truly is. They must be jealous of us.
That's, yeah.
It's quite beautiful in Chicago right now, too.
Well, we probably have you to thank because we get you get our weather before we get it. And Richard, thank you for being on tonight because the Chicago market wasn't looped into this. You know, we weren't being exclusive.
I don't know why they didn't
No
want to
reason
do
to.
it or couldn't do it, but they were kind enough to get the wines delivered to me about 50 minutes before this started. And
That's true. We didn't get our act together quickly enough, so you can blame it on me.
great.
Normally, we try to include Chicago whenever we can. Next week with Bordeaux. Bordeaux is an issue in Chicago in terms of distribution. So please join us, and I can even, you know, there'll be, the wines will be listed online, Richard, but you may not have accessibility to the specific ones in the Chicago market. We actually have better Bordeaux distribution for our stores in Michigan, which I'm always happy to say, considering that Detroit's considered a secondary market.
That's very interesting because I've been surprised at the Plum in Chicago has such an incredible selection and is always a little thin on Bordeaux, and I never knew.
The reason for that, and I'll be straightforward about it, we have a couple of competitive retailers that do a lot of business with, you know, with pre-orders on Bordeaux, and make it hard for us to be competitive with, you know, and we pride ourselves in reasonable pricing. So we don't give up on that section, but we're not as expensive as we are with other categories. And I'm not naming names, I'm just telling you, you know, the truth of it. Every store, distribution is very different in every state. And when we first went, I mean, I've got Brett, who's my master sommelier friend from Lux Wines, who's, you know, nodding in agreement. But when we first went to Chicago, the laws are different. In Michigan, a retailer cannot sell wine for less than they paid for it. In Chicago, they can. Not that they'd want to, but you know, it's aggressively competitive in Chicago, and there's all sorts of other, you know, issues that make it both an exciting market, but not quite as straightforward as Michigan. Brett, you want to say anything?
Well, the distributors do some pretty crazy things in Chicago as well. It becomes a place where they end up just dumping things for below what we sell them for, and you're just looking at them going, "Why would you do that?" You know, and it just, you know, and they just dump it out there. You know, it's a big market, and especially
that's more true with Bordeaux than with Burgundy.
Oh, the Bordeaux game period, yeah, in Florida and Chicago and city, in those type markets, that game gets very convoluted, I would say, to say the least, and it's hard for the normal retailers to play it, or normal distributors really to play the Bordeaux game when you're not in a control state. Yeah,
interesting.
So, you know, if you do the cunning little easy 4-hour drive to Michigan, we can sell you Bordeaux at any of the Plum stores. I'm not kidding. In Michigan, we can actually ship from Michigan to 19 states, but ironically, Illinois is not one of them.
Right.
So, you know, we can't say, "Hi, no worries, we'll sell you the Bordeaux from Michigan to Chicago." You'd have to make the trip. But conversely,
shipping is very complicated right now legally, and
probably because we both registered.
There are people who want to ship me wine, and they say I can ship it to you if you have an address in Wisconsin or Indiana, but not in Illinois or Michigan.
I'm guessing. I've never seen that.
Well, that's lightened up a lot of places. That surprises me, but you know, You know, I'm in Kentucky, which is definitely one of the hardest, but they've even opened up. So it's
Yeah,
legal. It's legal to ship, but they won't get rid of the rule where the shipper is not liable for who receives it. So it's the shippers who are making a lot of these decisions.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And that's why sometimes you have seemingly similarly situated shippers who have different policies, I think, because there are different questions about risk. I had somebody the other day say, I could ship this to you to a nearby state like Iowa or Kentucky. Are those close to you?
Kinda.
Closer than some states.
I have to tell you, John and Brett, we've got some guests on who, you know, Richard is one of them who's a very faithful guest from Chicago. We've got Dave Smith, the Moroffs, Paul Gustafson. We've got Elaine Thomas, the Lewises, the Huttons, who are now, you know, out of state, but Michigan-based friends. So one of the nicest things about my staying on a little bit later is seeing all the names that are on, and new names as well, which is terrific. Bobby Frank is on. So thank you guys for being so faithful to these tastings. Wasn't she wonderful?
Yeah.
He was really
Thanks for spending some time with us today, guys. It was really nice.
Organization.
You know, what's so beautiful about someone like Marilisa, who really is the subject, is that I get to be cheerfully lazy because I know she's going to touch on anything and everything that's important. And I just have to make sure I ask an occasional question, which actually John helped me with. But this is an area of the world that is worth studying a little bit. Like she actually said, she touched on something that is truly a universe if you go down the rabbit hole of the ancient culture of drying grapes. Goes back to ancient Crete, you know, and actually when I think the Veronese or the Venetians, you know, were in a position where they started, where they went into Crete and they were controlling it. It was such a great fit because they already had a drying grape culture there. But to Marilisa's point, most of it was headed towards wine that would end up sweet. So the you know, the phenomena of dry wine made from dried grapes is very modern. Am I getting that right, John and Brett?
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, I'll pull up. So I actually have a bottle of the Recioto from Giovanni.
Oh my God! This is the one. This is Giovanni Allegrini. This is the Recioto that.
Yeah, and you can see it's a 2001. I found it in a random retailer. I had it before, and it is delicious. You know, you start to get closer to that port sensibilities, but it doesn't really have that kind of dark fruit quality. There's still a level of freshness to this. It's really, really fabulous. But I just want to pull up a quick photo just to show you. You were talking a little bit with Marilisa about grape drying and Recioto. And so what you hear is, it says Amarone, but it says Recioto della Valpolicella, Amarone 1980. And that's because they didn't really have, you know, even as recently as 1980, they didn't really have a tradition of dry Amarone. And so even though this was a perceptibly dry wine, they still called it Recioto della Valpolicella Amarone all the way back, or just as recently as 1980. But I thought that was kind of cool.
That's extraordinary because they don't use, do they use the term Recioto on the Giovanni Allegrini bottle?
They do, actually. So yeah, they just used the Recioto in 1980 just to let people know it was dried grapes, even though but the Amarone is what indicated to people it was perceptibly dry. And then here it just says Recioto della Valpolicella.
So what do we do with this stuff in terms of at the table or with food? I mean, are we just beelining to terrific gorgonzola, or can we have it with main courses? What do you guys think about that?
So, you know, when people, you know, you try to pair wine with chocolate, I've always said like Mari and Bagno are like the only two wines. Actually, Recioto Valpolicella is that that third wine that actually will go with your more bittersweet chocolates. But I like it with cheeses, you know, the blues and that, but it actually does pair well with chocolate.
I think in one of the things I read from their website, Marilisa herself says that you can, with Amarone especially, go towards exotic Asian cuisine that's got some sweetness and heat, and Amarone can handle it. And I would PS to that my friend Evan Goldstein taught me this, who wrote Perfect Pairings, the book on food and wine harmony. If you haven't gotten it, honest to God, buy it, read it cover to cover. His mother, Joyce Goldstein, one of the founders of Chef Hanise, wrote all the recipes, and they work. So the takeaway for me on Amarone is you have that actual teeny actual sweetness, but illusion of sweetness that plays against the actual sweetness in some exotic Asian foods. And oddly, it's counterintuitive. The alcohol on this is what, like 15, 14 and a half, something like that. It's not that high, and it works. But it doesn't interfere with spicy food. It manages to, you know, kind of melt into it, especially if you have something like duck or a fatty meat that, you know, will counteract the tannin. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And, you know, theirs comes in around 15.3 and less than 3 grams residual.
So 3 grams residual, to put it in a frame of reference for everyone out there. You can't really taste it until you're what, Brett, like 6-ish, 6, 7?
Yeah, 6 or 7.
You know, when you hear wine geeks like us say grams per liter sugar, let's put it this way, a Brut Nature champagne is what, around 2, which is kind of nothing. And, you know, normal Bruts are fluttering above 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's still dry, even though there's a little bit of captured grape sugar in there.
Hey, John, will you throw that photo back up there again? I asked you, I was going to make a comment because I think it's very fitting. This is a Giovanni with 3 tasting glasses in his hands. And this winery has won over like 30 Tre Bicchieri awards over time. So I really love that that's like a foreshadowing of coming. And the Amarone, I think, is on their 20. They're approaching like 24th in a row of a Tre Bicchieri award, which is like the highest award you can get. It's from the Gambetta Rosso publication, but it's the Oscars of Italian wine.
He's amazing. I mean, how old was he when he died? Because he's got to be in his 60s or 70s in that picture, and he is nimble. I mean, yeah, unbelievable. But my favorite picture, I have to say, my very favorite picture of him and Marilisa when she's 12 years old, it just stunned me. It reminded me of me and my father at 12. Can you put that back up there?
I can.
And I think he's actually kind of short as opposed to her being.
That's what it is. And you know, and I realized
he's a small guy.
Yeah.
Right?
So I was thinking, God, she's a tall.
Because Franco's pretty short too. So it's
Now, was Walter the winemaker before he passed away? And it was he passed away too young, correct? It was a little untimely.
Very untimely.
That's
it was right after, yeah,
early
go ahead,
2000s.
John.
Yeah, it was right. So as Madeline referenced, so Marilisa Allegrini started a winery with her brother Walter in 2001 in Bulgari. And I believe Walter passed away in 2005. So it really wasn't long after from cancer. And so he was the winemaker at Poggio al Tesoro. And I'm not, to be honest with you, I don't know if he was the winemaker or if Franco was always the winemaker at Allegrini. Brett, I'm not sure if you know.
Franco is mostly the winemaker at Allegrini, but Walter was pretty much he was what Marilisa is now. He was the leader of the family.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I forgot to tell her. She gave me a bottle. Remember when they came out with a special bottling in Walter's honor?
Oh, they produce it every year.
I still have a bottle of that.
Yeah, that's the Cap Franc.
Yeah.
And the poor guy never saw a wine that he produced there bottled and sold. He died before any of the releases. There's a special plot at Poggio al Tesoro of Cabernet Franc that has this tree in the middle of it. And it's literally been written up as one of the best Cabernet Franc vineyards in the world.
And this is in Bulgari, correct?
This is in
On
Bulgari. If
coastal
you guys
Tuscany.
ever have a
Right.
chance, the Walter is very, very special. And it's not a shy wine, but it's just, you know, it melts your heart drinking it. But there's not, you know, outside of Chinon, there's not a lot of 100% Cab Franc wines out there.
What's the name of it? I slaughtered the name of it.
It's Dedicato to Walter.
The Walter.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you guys, we're pushing 5:30, but you know, this couldn't have been a nicer gathering of friends and colleagues.
Madeline, I have a question before you end.
Sure, Elaine.
Can you tell me for the La Grola, what would you pair that with? I don't think I heard.
The La Grola, it's a pretty strong red, but it's got a lot of concentrated fruit. You know, this is one red that I would say, don't go lighthearted food with it, meaning I wouldn't try to pair it even. You could maybe get away with salmon, but I would go to, if you're vegetarian, root vegetables that have some bitterness, or green, dark green leafies. If you're not vegetarian, you know, the Greek's going to tell you lamb every time.
Oh, okay.
Or actually briskety.
I love
lamb.
lamb. Did you say lamb?
Lamb, absolutely,
Oh,
lamb.
I love lamb.
And it can be as simple as, you know, high quality lamb chops, or it can be more stew-like, but I think this is a wine that can handle brisket. You guys want to chime in on La Grola cuisine?
I think you hit it. But if you are at the store and you want something simple, Parmigiano Reggiano is also a really nice pairing. Hard aged cheese, something with real saltiness to it. That'll go really well with.
You just said something, and this is salty, and some wines can't handle it, but that tremendous quality of fruit can handle salt in the Reggiano. So there you have it, Elaine.
Thank you.
Cynthia served an aged Gouda with it, and also a homemade pasta fagioli, which was
oh my God, and said goodbye to Marilisa in Italian, you know. So you guys have got to get me that recipe so I can send it to everyone who was a guest this evening. John and Brett, I love you. Thank you for making this possible. And everyone else, I love you more.
Thanks, everyone.
So
thanks for spending time with us, guys. Cheers.
I'll see you next week. So remember, Thursday, I think it's October 1st, 6:30 Eastern. Richard, it'll be 5:30 Central for Bordeaux. 15s and 16s with a cunning little 18 aperitif made by Aubryon. Yay.
Interesting.
Thanks, everybody. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Salute.